Night drapes over the eastern shore of the lake like a velvet curtain. Tombs break the horizon, their jagged outlines like the teeth of a forgotten predator. The wind carries the scent of brine and decay, stirring whispers in the reeds. A small boat approaches the shore, cutting through the still water with barely a ripple. 12 men disembark, but one figure walks ahead, moving with authority, purpose, and a quiet intensity that commands attention. From the shadows of the hills, a figure emerges, naked, emaciated, scars running across his body like a topography of suffering. Rusted iron cuffs hang broken from his wrists, the evidence of failed attempts to bind him. Villagers have tried everything: chains, exile, threats, prayers, denial, but nothing holds. The man's voice rises, a chorus of anguish and madness, gravel and echo intertwined. What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? God? The reply comes not as a command, but a question, a key turning in a lock. What is your name? And the answer shatters the night. My name is Legion, for we are many. A Roman term, 5,000 foot soldiers, disciplined and terrifying, repurposed as a name, not just one spirit, but many. This is a microcosm of chaos, possession, negotiation, displacement, and destruction, all wrapped into a single human vessel. The demons plead for a host. A herd of pigs is offered. They rush into the lake in a frenzied stampede, disappearing beneath the dark water, leaving the man free and the villagers paralyzed with awe. The silence that follows is deafening, not terror of the demon, but terror of deliverance. The man, clothed and in his right mind, becomes a witness, a living testament to the power of naming, of authority, of intervention. Everything essential to demonology is here. Names matter. Context matters more. Across centuries, scholars and mystics would pore over stories like this, extracting patterns of possession, exorcism, and negotiation. The story of Legion frames the cosmic drama in microcosm, the struggle between unseen powers, the human response, and the precise point where fear meets understanding. Even in this first encounter, the stage is set for a centuries-long conversation about evil, from the prosecutor in Job to the chaos of Leviathan, from Asmodeus in a household tragedy to Moloch in the furnace of ritual horror. Everything begins here, with a man, a question, a name, and the quiet, shivering awe of those who witness it. And yet, the narrative doesn't linger in triumph. The village asks the deliverer to leave. Healing, freedom, restoration, they are gifts met with fear. Power, when revealed, challenges perception. This story, more than a miracle, is a mirror, reflecting both the depth of darkness and the precise moment of redemption. The lesson is clear. To understand the worst demons, we must first see them in action, not as abstract concepts, but as forces with names, personalities, and consequences. And that is where our journey begins. A journey through history, scripture, legend, and imagination, tracing the evolution of evil, its counters, and the eternal struggle between the forces of chaos and the forces of order. In the earliest layers of the Hebrew Bible, evil doesn't look like the devils of later imagination. There are no horns, no fiery thrones, no infernal armies. Instead, it is subtle, judicial, and strangely procedural. The word is Satan, the adversary. In the story of Job, Satan appears in the divine court not as a rebel king, but as a kind of cosmic prosecutor. He tests, questions, and challenges, operating under the strict permission of God. He roams, he observes, and he reports back, but he does not act on his own authority. Picture it, a courtroom in the heavens, angels like clerks, cosmic law books, and a man's life at stake. Satan is permitted to push, to tempt, but never to override the ultimate authority. It is a chilling, yet meticulous view of evil, one that emphasizes limitation, accountability, and a balance between chaos and divine order. As centuries unfold, Jewish literature begins to personify evil. The Second Temple period, roughly 500 BCE to 70 CE, saw an explosion of texts that sought to explain not just acts of evil, but agents behind them, angels who fell from grace, spirits who walked unseen, powers that tempted, deceived, and corrupted. These writings give form to what was previously a role, an abstract function. Names emerge, like Belial, and general patterns of hierarchy begin to appear. Evil becomes something to recognize, name, and organize against. By the time the New Testament is written, this evolution is complete. Satan and the devil merge into a single cosmic antagonist. The world is populated with principalities and powers, and evil takes on a kingdom-like structure. In the Gospels, Jesus speaks not just of temptation, but of a ruler of the world, a presence guiding human misdeeds from a hidden throne. The grammar of evil has shifted from a function to a regime, from an abstract adversary to a strategic, almost bureaucratic force, with names, methods, and reach. But the story isn't just about hierarchy. It's about the human need to understand, to categorize, and to resist. Naming evil is the first step in combating it. By giving it shape through title, action, or narrative, humankind learns how to recognize it in the world. What began as a role in a celestial court evolves into fully fleshed entities that will stalk imagination for millennia. The generals, the princes, the spirits of malice that fill scripture, folklore, and eventually culture itself. And yet, even as these beings take form, they remain elusive. Their identities shift depending on context, interpretation, and fear. One community sees Belial as chaos incarnate. Another interprets Satan as a questioning presence, ensuring moral integrity through challenge. The line between role and persona is blurred, yet deliberate. It teaches that evil is both systemic and personal, both abstract and concrete, both feared and necessary to define. This evolution, Satan to Satan, abstract role to named adversary, is more than theology. It's a mirror of human perception. How do we confront danger, temptation, or moral corruption? How do we understand forces beyond control? We give them names, structures, and stories. And that act of naming transforms fear into narrative, threat into understanding, chaos into drama. By the end of this transformation, humanity has not just a concept of evil, they have an enemy they can identify, a story to follow, and a framework for the battles that lie ahead. It is the foundation upon which all later demonology, angelology, and apocalyptic imagination will build. And from here, the story moves forward, tracking the rise of Satan from a restrained prosecutor to a dragon of revelation, a cosmic opponent whose reach spans heaven and earth. In the beginning, Satan wasn't the horned, fiery monarch of hell that popular imagination later imagined. In the Hebrew Bible, he is Hey Satan, the adversary, a courtroom figure who tests human integrity. Job's trials are the quintessential example. Satan reports on Job's faithfulness, asks permission to test him, and is constrained by divine law. He doesn't act independently. He operates under authority, functioning as a cosmic instrument rather than a rebellious agent. Imagine the scene: a heavenly council, scrolls of law, angels whispering, and a man on earth about to endure suffering beyond comprehension. The adversary moves like a prosecutor, probing, questioning, and exploiting human weakness, but all within strict boundaries. Evil, at this point, is precise, disciplined, and almost clinical. But the Second Temple period, from roughly 500 BCE to 70 CE, begins to reshape this figure dramatically. Jewish literature asks new questions. Where does corruption come from? Why does evil persist? The answers grow bolder, imaginative, and increasingly personalized. Texts like the Book of Enoch portray fallen angels, like Shemihaza and Azazel, descending to earth, teaching forbidden arts, and corrupting humanity. Here, evil becomes an active agent, a force with generals, leaders, and followers. Hey Satan's role as a tester of morality expands into a cosmic opposition, forces seeking to disrupt God's order. By the time the New Testament is written, the evolution is complete. Satan is no longer a role. He is a personalized cosmic antagonist, wielding power, strategy, and influence over empires and individuals. In the Gospels, Satan tempts Jesus in the wilderness, a calculated adversary attempting to redirect history itself. The stakes are now universal, not just one man's faith, but the course of creation. The narrative crescendos in Revelation, where Satan transforms into the seven-headed dragon, a creature of terrifying scale and cosmic ambition. Michael, the chief warrior angel, confronts him in a battle that stretches across heaven. The dragon is hurled down, stripped of his place in the celestial order, yet his influence persists on earth, spreading deception and chaos. The imagery is visceral, scales glinting like burnished metal, wings blotting out the sky, a roar that shakes the cosmos. Evil has become both dramatic and systemic, a kingdom in rebellion. This transformation, from prosecutor to dragon, is more than theology. It reflects human concerns about power, morality, and cosmic justice. Satan's restraint becomes Satan's ambition. Testing becomes temptation. Individual challenge becomes universal conflict. Across centuries, authors, prophets, and scholars describe a growing sophistication in evil, giving it names, personalities, and domains, and yet, even as Satan gains power, he is not invincible. Angels, divine law, and human righteousness are portrayed as counterforces, reminding audiences that no matter how vast or terrifying the adversary, there are frameworks of resistance. Michael's victory over the dragon is symbolic. Organization, courage, and divine strategy can overcome chaos and deception. By the end of this arc, Satan's story is complete in its trajectory, from a limited judicial role to a cosmic embodiment of opposition. The narrative sets a stage for all subsequent demonology. Named demons, fallen angels, and structured evil are extensions of this evolution. Each subsequent story, whether about Beelzebub, Asmodeus, or Leviathan, builds on the template established here. Evil is organized, dangerous, and strategically opposed by forces of order, and the lesson for us, centuries later, is profound. Understanding evil begins with observation, naming, and comprehension. Only then can one respond, whether through ritual, narrative, or moral courage. The rise of Satan is not just a myth, it is a blueprint for the human confrontation with chaos, fear, and corruption. From here, the narrative moves into a new layer, the Watchers and Azazel, exploring how angels who fell from heaven brought forbidden knowledge to humanity, escalating the story of corruption and cosmic tension. Between the Testaments, a question haunted Jewish imagination. Where does corruption come from? Why does the world harbor evil so vast it seems almost divine in scope? The answer comes from one of the most mysterious and vivid texts outside the Hebrew Bible, the Book of Enoch. In Enoch, a group of angels known as the Watchers descend from heaven. They were tasked with observing humanity, but curiosity becomes transgression. They gaze upon human women, and desire overwhelms duty. The result is catastrophic. The Watchers teach forbidden arts, crafting weapons, teaching sorcery, making cosmetics, revealing enchantments that corrupt hearts and minds. From knowledge without wisdom comes chaos. Humanity becomes a mirror of angelic failure, a world suddenly suffused with violence, vanity, and moral confusion. Among these celestial renegades, names emerge: Shemihaza, the leader who persuades others to join the fall, and Azazel, who instructs in the deadliest arts of warfare and deceit. Their actions are not abstract, they have consequences. Humanity inherits weapons, false knowledge, and temptations that alter the course of society. Civilization itself becomes a stage for moral testing, showing that evil can propagate through both intention and instruction. But Azazel's story does not start with Enoch. His name is older, appearing in the ritual of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. 2 goats are chosen, one for the Lord, one for Azazel. Scholars debate Azazel as cliff, desert demon, or wilderness spirit. But the ritual is clear. One goat is sacrificed, the other carries the sins of the community into the wilderness. The scapegoat, a tangible object of expulsion, embodies the projection of communal guilt onto a named force. The English word scapegoat still echoes this ancient practice, a linguistic testament to humanity's desire to manage transgression through naming and ritual. Visualize the scene: a priest casting lots, hands trembling with anticipation. The chosen goat is led into the desert, carrying the invisible weight of sin. Meanwhile, human society braces, aware of the invisible forces that threaten moral and cosmic balance. Azazel, whether demon or symbol, embodies the wilderness of human fear, the unknown that must be named and negotiated. Enoch's narrative and the Yom Kippur ritual converge on a profound truth. Evil is not just action, but influence. It corrupts knowledge, desire, and technology. It spreads through teaching, persuasion, and hidden power. Yet, there is also hope embedded in the story. God chains the watchers, punishes the leaders, and provides frameworks, rituals, commandments, divine oversight through which humanity can survive, resist, and restore order. These stories, vivid and layered, lay the foundation for later demonology. The fallen angels of Enoch are precursors to Beelzebub, Belial, and the myriad named demons of medieval grimoires. Azazel, Shemihaza, and their followers demonstrate that naming evil, understanding its method, and restricting its reach are central to human survival, whether through ritual, myth, or narrative. And yet, the story contains subtle warnings: knowledge without wisdom, desire without restraint, power without accountability. They are forces that ripple through generations. Humanity sees these transgressions reflected in its own history: wars, crimes, seductions, inventions turned destructive. The Watchers teach more than sin. They teach foresight. Evil thrives in gaps between action and comprehension. The lesson is clear: understanding, naming, and ritualizing against malevolent forces is not merely religious practice. It is an enduring human strategy. And as the narrative unfolds, we see these lessons echoed in later texts and traditions. The story of Azazel, of the Watchers, prepares the stage for Beelzebub and Belial, for Asmodeus and Leviathan, each building upon the cosmic drama of disobedience, punishment, and the human struggle to navigate unseen forces. From here, the story moves forward into the evolving hierarchy of demons, beginning with Beelzebub, a god turned prince of demons, reshaping human imagination for centuries. In the ancient city of Ekron, a coastal Philistine stronghold, worshippers once lifted their voices to Baal-zebub, a god whose name meant Lord of the Flies. Here, flies were not just pests. They symbolized nuisance, decay, and contamination, but also the invisible forces that shape daily life. To call upon Baal-zebub was to petition for protection or insight, but centuries later, the name would shift in meaning, transformed by polemic, fear, and religious rivalry. In the Hebrew Bible, we first encounter Baal-zebub in 2 Kings 1. King Ahaziah falls ill and sends messengers to consult Baal-zebub about his recovery. The prophet Elijah intercepts them with a scathing message. The king relies on a false power, one that cannot save. Here begins a subtle but powerful reimagining. Baal-zebub becomes more than a foreign deity. He becomes a symbol of demonic influence, the archetype of rival power seeking to challenge divine authority. Centuries later, in the New Testament, The transformation is complete. The Pharisees accuse Jesus of exorcising spirits by Beelzebul, prince of demons. The polemic is razor sharp. If Jesus' miracles come by the prince of demons, then every act of healing is a hostile takeover of evil's kingdom. It is both accusation and recognition, acknowledgement that power exists and that someone, somewhere, is controlling it. Jesus' response reframes the narrative. If Satan drives out Satan, the kingdom is divided. True authority comes from above, not from the hierarchy of evil. Beelzebub is no longer just a god or a demon. He becomes a strategic entity, a figure with agency, goals, and influence. Later demonologies solidify this transformation. Beelzebub is ranked among hell's top princes, a commander in the infernal army. His portfolio? Manipulation, chaos, and opposition to divine order. He is cunning, political, and dangerous, not through brute force alone, but through strategy and hierarchy. Visualize it: swarms of flies buzzing over an altar, the air thick with decay and unseen malice. Then, a courtroom scene, centuries later, as Jesus calmly answers accusations, exposing the fragile architecture of false authority. The contrast is striking. Pestilent nuisance transformed into sophisticated power, a narrative that spans centuries, cultures, and texts. Beelzebub's evolution highlights a recurring pattern in demonology. Names matter because they shape perception. By naming a force, humanity gives it identity, hierarchy, and boundaries. Beelzebub is not abstract chaos. He is organized, recognized, and counterable. This principle echoes across every demon story that follows. Belial, Asmodeus, Leviathan, Abaddon, all inherit this template: a named power with defined methods, strengths, and weaknesses. And yet, there is nuance. Beelzebub's story is also a mirror of human fear and imagination. The transformation from God to demon reflects societal anxieties, foreign influence, spiritual competition, and the danger of unseen manipulation. It shows how myth and religion adapt, repurpose, and redefine existing forces to make sense of the moral universe. In the grand narrative of demons, Beelzebub stands at a crossroads. He is both historical and symbolic, bridging ancient worship and Christian demonology. His story teaches a crucial lesson. Understanding evil requires tracing its evolution, seeing how humans project fears onto entities, and recognizing the strategies by which power and corruption operate, both in myth and in the human psyche. From here, the story moves deeper into structured opposition, with Belial at Qumran, where an entire sect personifies evil as a general commanding legions, sharpening the cosmic war between light and darkness. Along the windswept cliffs of the Dead Sea, a secluded sect quietly observed the world, chronicling their beliefs on scrolls of parchment that would endure for millennia. This was the home of the Qumran community, a people devoted to ritual purity, strict law, and a cosmic understanding of history as a battle between light and darkness. At the heart of their vision stood a figure who was both abstract and terrifying: Belial. Originally, the word Belial meant worthlessness or destruction. But in the war scrolls and sectarian texts of Qumran, it transforms into a personalized general of evil, commanding legions of demonic forces against the sons of light. Belial is no longer a mere concept. He is a strategic, cunning adversary, orchestrating corruption, temptation, and chaos. The community sees history as a battlefield, with divine intervention and human courage working in tandem to resist him. Imagine a scene etched in parchment. Armies clash, banners rip through desert winds, and a figure of darkness surveys the field. Belial directs not through brute force alone, but through manipulation, inspiring fear, and subtle corruption. Every human misdeed, every moral lapse, is a reflection of his influence. The War Scroll, 1QM, paints a vivid picture. God's great hand will ultimately overcome Belial and all the angels of his dominion, restoring order and rewarding the faithful. But there is more than cosmic war here. Belial is a teaching tool, a name for the forces that threaten communal and personal integrity. By personifying evil, the Qumran sect provides a framework for understanding temptation, sin, and societal disorder. Naming Belial allows the community to focus prayer, ritual, and vigilance, turning fear into structured response. Belial's influence extends beyond Qumran. Later, Jewish texts and Christian demonology echo his example, showing how a named force of evil can occupy myth, scripture, and imagination. He becomes a template, a general commanding chaos, opposed by angels, human heroes, or divine authority. His legacy underscores a recurring principle. Evil is most comprehensible when it is structured, named, and confronted. Visualize the parchment in close-up, inked letters forming commands, lists of angels and demons, meticulous instructions for ritual response. Then, wide shots of desert fortresses, stark against the sun, illustrating the sect's isolation and vigilance. Banners of light and darkness wave in the imagination, a symbolic representation of the eternal struggle. Belial is also a cautionary figure. He embodies the danger of moral entropy, the consequences when communities or individuals fail to maintain focus, discipline, and integrity. Yet, within this caution is hope. The texts emphasize that no general of darkness can triumph over the combined force of divine oversight and human commitment. The narrative reassures that evil, no matter how organized, is never beyond comprehension or resistance. From this vantage, the Qumran texts not only provide a demonology, they also offer a philosophy of resistance. By naming evil, understanding its methods, and predicting its actions, humanity gains tools for vigilance, morality, and spiritual survival. Belial teaches strategy. To confront darkness, one must first recognize it as organized, deliberate, and counterable. As the story moves forward, the focus narrows from Belial's army to individual demons, more intimate and personal in their interactions with humans. The next figure, Asmodeus, shifts the narrative from cosmic warfare to domestic peril, a demon whose interference is deadly, yet contained within a household, illustrating how evil operates at every scale, from the empire to the family. In the heart of the ancient city of Nineveh, a story unfolds that is intimate, terrifying, and strangely domestic. Unlike the vast armies of Belial or the cosmic scale of Satan, Asmodeus operates on a personal level, stalking households and disrupting love itself. In the Book of Tobit, this demon targets Sarah, a young woman whose life should have been ordinary and hopeful. But Asmodeus intervenes with deadly precision. On each wedding night, one after another, her bridegrooms are mysteriously slain. 7 men vanish before the marriage can be consummated. Fear and despair settle over Sarah's family, a private apocalypse unfolding behind closed doors. Here, evil is intimate, targeted, and relentless. The threat is immediate, yet hidden, forcing the audience to confront the notion that danger is not always grandiose. It can strike where love and life intersect. Enter Raphael, the divine counter-agent, disguised as a guide and healer. Raphael teaches Tobias, Sarah's chosen, a precise ritual. Using the heart and liver of a fish, Tobias generates a smoke that drives Asmodeus away, binding the demon and clearing the path for life and love to continue. The story transforms from terror to strategy. Evil can be confronted, neutralized, and contained when the right knowledge, names, and actions are employed. Visualize it. Candlelight flickers over a modest chamber. The fish prepared with ritualistic care, smoke curling upward into the night. A shadow passes across the walls. The presence of Asmodeus, felt but unseen. Then the demon flees, defeated not by brute force alone, but by careful preparation, understanding, and divine assistance. This is a battle where intellect, ritual, and faith converge. Asmodeus embodies a specific kind of fear, lust, jealousy, and obsession corrupted into destruction. Yet the narrative emphasizes healing and restoration. Raphael is not just an angel, he is a teacher, showing that divine intervention often works through instruction and human action. This interplay, demon versus angel, chaos versus wisdom, is a microcosm of the larger cosmic battles explored in earlier sections. The story of Asmodeus also reinforces a key principle of demonology. Naming a force gives power over it. By calling the demon Asmodeus, identifying its methods, and deploying the correct countermeasures, the narrative establishes a pattern repeated throughout scripture and folklore. Every named entity, Beelzebub, Belial, Leviathan, follows this template. Recognition leads to strategy, and strategy leads to survival. There is also a moral texture here. Evil is not just external, it mirrors human flaws, fear, impulsiveness, and ignorance. Tobias's success is as much about courage and learning as it is about the divine ritual. The story subtly teaches that vigilance, preparation, and knowledge are as essential in resisting corruption as the intervention of angels. The tale of Asmodeus bridges the cosmic and the personal. From the vast armies of Belial and the apocalyptic dragons of Revelation, the narrative narrows to a household, to a couple threatened by malevolent forces. It reminds us that evil operates at every scale, from the empire to the family, from the grand to the intimate, and that every victory requires strategy, courage, and awareness. From this point, the narrative expands again to Leviathan and Behemoth, monsters of chaos on a cosmic scale, demonstrating how the framework established by stories like Asmodeus's can apply to forces of unimaginable magnitude, where human and angelic intervention confront the wild, untamed power of creation itself. Stand at the edge of the Mediterranean, where the waves crash like the drums of ancient battles, and imagine a force so immense it makes mountains tremble. This is Leviathan, the untamable sea monster, whose power and fury dominate the imagination of biblical authors and later Jewish tradition. Alongside him stands Behemoth, the land-bound counterpart, a creature of immense strength, embodying the chaotic power of creation itself. Together, they are not mere monsters. They are symbols, warnings, and measuring sticks for divine mastery over the universe. In the book of Job, God challenges humanity. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook or press down his tongue with a cord? The description is staggering. Fire boils from its nostrils. Iron is like straw against its might, and no human weapon can subdue it. Leviathan represents chaos in its purest form, an embodiment of natural and cosmic power beyond comprehension. Behemoth, meanwhile, stands on land, a colossal beast of strength and stability, the anchor of creation's terrestrial order. Later, texts amplify their symbolism. Psalm 74 portrays God crushing the heads of multi-headed sea monsters, demonstrating that even Leviathan is subject to divine will. Isaiah 27:1 depicts the future slaying of Leviathan as part of God's ultimate plan, transforming the monstrous chaos into a stage for justice and restoration. These creatures, terrifying in isolation, are ultimately tools of moral and cosmic instruction, illustrating the scale of order required to contain chaos. Visualize the scene: a storm-lashed sea, waves like mountains, scales glittering under lightning. Leviathan thrashes, force of raw destruction. Across the plains, Behemoth stamps the earth, shaking forests and rivers alike. Yet in every movement there is purpose, chaos that is measured, tamed, and destined to serve a larger cosmic narrative. The imagery is both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a testament to the biblical imagination. In apocalyptic literature, Leviathan and Behemoth take on a ritual role. They are to become sustenance for the righteous in the eschatological banquet, a reversal of terror into provision. Chaos, once feared, is transformed into sustenance under divine control. Their narrative teaches that power, no matter how destructive, can be harnessed and redirected, provided there is wisdom, strategy, and authority. These monsters also serve as cautionary mirrors for humanity. They embody forces beyond human control: natural disasters, political upheavals, personal crises. Yet their stories assure us that such forces are neither infinite nor ungoverned. They are subject to law, judgment, and the cosmic architecture of morality. The pairing of Leviathan and Behemoth highlights a recurring pattern in Judeo-Christian demonology: balance between cosmic forces and human agency. While Asmodeus disrupts households and Belial commands armies, Leviathan and Behemoth remind us that some adversaries are elemental, unbound, and larger than life. They place human and angelic intervention in perspective, showing the scale at which strategy, courage, and divine oversight operate. From this narrative, we move next to Abaddon, Apollyon, the angel of the abyss. While Leviathan and Behemoth are creatures of chaos, Abaddon is a figure of purposeful destruction, reminding us that not all adversaries are rebellious. Some are instruments of judgment, and understanding them requires as much strategy as confronting any monster. The trumpet sounds and smoke billows from a bottomless pit. From this darkness emerges a figure both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Abaddon in Hebrew, Apollyon in Greek, the destroyer, the angel of the abyss. Unlike Leviathan, a chaotic force, or Asmodeus, an intimate predator, Abaddon embodies purposeful execution, a divine instrument of judgment that reminds humanity that evil is not always rebellious. It can be methodical, precise, and sanctioned. Revelation 9 unveils a scene that fuses horror with order. Locusts swarm, armored like soldiers, their faces human, their stings sharp, their authority unmistakable. They obey a king, a master, a commander, Abaddon. His function is not to tempt, deceive, or corrupt. It is to punish and enforce, to act as a measured, deliberate response to human failure. In the apocalypse, even destruction has structure, rhythm, and divine sanction. Visualize the abyss, smoke rolling across a scorched landscape, locusts marching with precision, a shadowed figure atop the pit, crown and authority unmistakable. Abaddon's terror is not in chaos, but in inevitability, the inevitability of judgment. This is bureaucratic horror, where divine justice operates with military discipline and rebellion meets not confusion, but execution. Abaddon's presence teaches a crucial lesson about demonology. Not all powerful entities are adversaries in the classic sense. Some are instruments carrying out mandates, enforcing cosmic law. This distinction shapes the narrative across scripture and lore. While some demons fight against God or humanity, others, like Abaddon, execute divine will, blending fear and order. Yet the human imagination cannot resist projecting moral terror onto such figures. Abaddon becomes a symbol of consequences, of what occurs when humanity fails, when chaos must be checked, when divine authority enforces its will. The narrative blurs lines between angelic purpose and demonic fear, reminding us that perception defines much of our response to power. The figure of Abaddon also bridges the cosmic and the human. Locusts devour crops, armies fall, communities tremble. The angel's reach is systemic, affecting societies rather than individuals. This contrasts with Asmodeus, whose terror is intimate, and Leviathan, whose chaos is elemental. Abaddon represents societal scale judgment, showing that evil, destruction, and fear exist at multiple dimensions, each demanding recognition and response. In later Christian and apocalyptic traditions, Abaddon inspires reflection, art, and cautionary tales. His name enters lore as a marker of ultimate consequence, a figure whose methodical authority underscores the seriousness of divine judgment. He teaches that understanding evil is not only about identifying rebellion, but also discerning the instruments of enforcement. those who act under orders, yet still terrify. From here, the narrative pivots to Mammon and Moloch, demons of greed and consumption. While Abaddon punishes with precision, Mammon tempts with desire, and Moloch devours innocence. These forces illustrate the full spectrum of adversaries in Judeo-Christian thought, from cosmic enforcement to intimate, insidious temptation, preparing us for the final chapters of the demon story. Say the word Mammon and imagine a presence that whispers in the shadows of every market, every treasury, every ambition. Initially, Mammon is simply a term for wealth, neutral in its existence. But by the time of the Gospels, it transforms into a demonic embodiment of greed, a rival master demanding service and devotion. You cannot serve God and Mammon, Jesus declares, exposing wealth as more than material. It becomes a spiritual force, a seductive power capable of ensnaring hearts, communities, and even empires. Visualize this: piles of coins stacked high, shadows crawling between them, fingers reaching endlessly, never satisfied. Mammon is subtle, but pervasive, unlike Leviathan, whose chaos is overt, or Asmodeus, whose threat is intimate. Mammon tempts quietly, infiltrating the soul with desire, ambition, and obsession. It's a force that can consume without fire, destroy without blood, a demon operating through the human heart. Moloch, in contrast, is fire incarnate, a terror of ritual and cultural memory. Mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, Moloch becomes synonymous with child sacrifice. Scholars debate, was Moloch a deity, a ritual term, or a metaphor for destructive systems? Regardless, Moloch's image endures, a fiery furnace, devouring innocence, demanding the most precious offerings. Here, evil is not abstract temptation, but immediate, violent, and horrifying. The contrast between Mammon and Moloch illustrates the spectrum of fear in demonology. Mammon corrupts through subtlety and persuasion. Moloch annihilates through spectacle and sacrifice. Both, however, embody societal anxieties, greed, exploitation, and the moral cost of power. They reflect human concerns, showing that demons often serve as mirrors for what communities fear. Most visualize a split scene. On one side, a shadowed marketplace, gold slipping through fingers like water. On the other, a flickering altar, flames licking the sky, tiny figures silhouetted in terror. Both images communicate dread, but at different scales. One personal and systemic, the other ritualized and catastrophic. The story emphasizes that evil adapts to its context, whether as a whisper of temptation or a roaring fire demanding life. Mammon's narrative extends into medieval and later Christian imagination, transforming greed into a demon with agency. It becomes a name, a target, a force that can be recognized, resisted, and conquered. Similarly, Moloch becomes shorthand for any machine, system, or practice that consumes the innocent, whether literal or metaphorical. Together, they reveal a truth central to demonology. Evil is multidimensional, operating through desire, destruction, and social structures alike. The story of Mammon and Moloch also underscores the relationship between fear and morality. By naming these forces, humanity gains understanding and leverage. Wealth, desire, and destructive cultural practices are no longer abstract threats. They are entities with characteristics, patterns, and vulnerabilities. Recognition becomes strategy, allowing vigilance and action. From here, the narrative moves to Lilith and Samael, exploring the intersection of night, desire, and death, a realm where seduction, mortality, and spiritual peril converge, while Mammon and Moloch teach lessons about human ambition and systemic destruction. Lilith and Samael explore the personal, psychological, and nocturnal dimensions of fear, completing the spectrum of the worst demons. Night falls over ancient lands, and with it comes a shadow, both alluring and dangerous. Lilith, first whispered in the Hebrew Bible as a solitary night creature, emerges in folklore as a demoness of desire and destruction, often cast as Adam's first wife who refused submission and fled Eden. Her image evolves over centuries, a seductress, a bringer of death, a child snatcher, and a figure of female independence feared and admired in equal measure. Lilith embodies unrestrained desire and the consequences of defiance. In some texts, she targets infants. In others, she tempts men. She blurs the lines between natural instinct, transgression, and supernatural threat. Visualize her: long flowing hair, eyes glowing in the dark, shadows slipping through the quiet streets of Babylon or the medieval Jewish ghettos. She represents what societies fear when human desire escapes control, a nightly warning of vulnerability and risk. Alongside her stalks Samael, the venom of God. Depending on the text, Samael is accuser, tempter, or angel of death. His presence is a constant reminder that mortality, judgment, and divine testing are inescapable. Where Lilith tempts and lures, Samael strikes with finality, intertwining Eros and Thanatos into a dual force of seduction and mortality. Together, they form a narrative of human peril, both intimate and inevitable, showing that evil can operate in the deepest, most personal spheres. Visualize the nocturnal tableau: a cradle protected by amulets, the moon casting silver light on empty streets, shadows curling like fingers across walls. Lilith glides silently. Samael follows, like a shadow of consequence. Their force is intertwined with human lives in subtle and terrifying ways. The imagery evokes dread, fascination, and the tension between survival and surrender. The legend of Lilith is also a story of social and cultural reflection. She embodies anxieties about independence, sexuality, and the unknown, while Samael reminds humans that death and judgment are ever present. Together, they teach that demonology is not only about evil acting externally, it mirrors human fears, moral dilemmas, and existential realities. From a theological perspective, both Lilith and Samael illustrate dual aspects of divine and demonic interplay. Lilith tempts, but is also bound within mythic limits. Samael executes, but acts as a divine instrument. This duality mirrors earlier sections. Cosmic forces like Leviathan and Behemoth, structured forces like Belial, intimate forces like Asmodeus. The spectrum of evil stretches from the societal to the cosmic, the domestic to the existential. The pairing also provides narrative rhythm. After the destructive power of Mammon and Moloch, Lilith and Samael focus on personal, psychological, and nocturnal dimensions, bridging the worldly and spiritual, preparing the stage for angels' intervention. The story moves naturally to the next section: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, where the executive force of heaven organizes, strategizes, and confronts these threats directly. Lilith and Samael remind us evil is multifaceted, intimate, and persistent. Recognition, ritual, and knowledge, like those used against Asmodeus, remain essential tools for protection. Their stories teach vigilance, morality, and awareness, emphasizing that understanding fear is often the first step to overcoming it. As the shadows of demons stretch across earth and sky, a counterforce rises. The archangels, the executive agents of divine will. These are no abstract figures. They are strategists, warriors, and healers, each with a portfolio, each responding to the threats personified by Asmodeus, Leviathan, Abaddon, Mammon, Lilith, and Samael. Michael, Israel's chief prince, is a cosmic general. In Daniel 10, he contends with the princes of Persia and Greece, demonstrating that even empires and cosmic powers are not beyond divine oversight. His ultimate victory is immortalized in Revelation 12. He leads heaven's army against the dragon, casting down Satan and securing the heavens. Michael embodies force, strategy, and divine justice, a warrior whose victories are as much about law and authority as they are about brute power. Gabriel is the messenger, the communicator of divine decrees, from annunciations of birth to interpretations of visions. Gabriel's role is precision and clarity. Unlike Michael, he does not wield the sword, he wields information. His influence lies in knowledge and timing, delivering messages that shape human destiny. Gabriel reminds us that power is not only physical, it is intellectual and prophetic. Raphael, the healer, engages directly with the intimate dangers of human life. In the book of Tobit, he guides Tobias, teaches ritual, binds Asmodeus, and restores health and marriage. Raphael's intervention illustrates a principle central to demonology: knowledge plus action equals protection. The angel does not merely fight, he instructs, demonstrating that divine solutions often operate through human agency. Uriel emerges in apocryphal texts as an interpreter of visions, the illuminator of secrets. He stands at the intersection of knowledge and foresight, helping humans navigate threats that are spiritual, psychological, and eschatological. Uriel exemplifies wisdom applied, showing that insight is as crucial as intervention in confronting the complex spectrum of evil. Visualize the archangels in action: Michael with scales and sword, armies of light at his command; Gabriel speaking into the ears of kings and prophets, messages burning with truth; Raphael walking the road with Tobias, guiding with skill and care; Uriel unveiling visions in a darkened chamber, illuminating what was hidden. Each angel operates in a distinct sphere, Yet together, they form a coordinated defense against cosmic, societal, and personal evil. Second Temple texts, like those preserved by Josephus, show exorcisms performed in the name of Solomon, using rings, rituals, and sacred words. These practices reflect a real, historical belief that names and authority matter, that the spiritual hierarchy is practical, actionable, and intertwined with human responsibility. Archangels are the operational executives of that hierarchy, ensuring that divine will manifests in precise, effective ways. The Angel's Playbook teaches a crucial principle. Evil is not monolithic. For every Asmodeus, Mammon, or Abaddon, there is a counter strategy, a corresponding guardian. Their interventions, whether through force, guidance, prophecy, or healing, illustrate the spectrum of response required: combat, instruction, insight, and protection. Each angel is both narrative character and archetype, showing viewers that resilience against fear requires understanding and action across multiple levels. From here, the story moves to medieval grimoires and the demon directory, where humans attempt to codify, classify, and wrestle control over a chaotic spiritual world. The archangel's strategies contrast sharply with human attempts. Divine intervention is coherent and effective. Human methods are improvised, partial, and often dangerous. But the underlying principle remains the same. Knowledge, order, and naming are central to survival. By the late Middle Ages, the spiritual landscape had evolved. Demons were no longer only forces of chaos or instruments of divine will. They were cataloged, ranked, and systematized. Across Europe, scholars, monks, and magicians began producing grimoires, manuals that classified spirits with meticulous attention to rank, name, and function. These books offered human attempts to understand and control the invisible world. One of the most famous is the Ars Goetia, part of the Lesser Key of Solomon. Here, 72 demons are listed, each with a title, a hierarchy, a seal, and a specific portfolio of abilities. Some teach sciences, others command armies, some incite lust or destruction. The grimoires reflect a worldview where order could be imposed on the spiritual realm, where names, symbols, and rituals granted human agency against forces otherwise terrifying. The Malleus Maleficarum, another cornerstone of late medieval literature, takes a different approach, a manual for detecting, confronting, and punishing witches and their demonic accomplices. Though rooted in superstition and often brutal, it illustrates the human desire to categorize and codify evil, to transform the chaotic and invisible into something manageable. People sought certainty in a world full of moral, social, and spiritual anxieties. Visualize the scene: candlelit study halls, parchment scrolls scattered across tables, ink-stained hands tracing sigils and diagrams. Diagrams depict hierarchies of hell, with demons nested beneath princes like Belial, Beelzebub, and Asmodeus. Names are power, seals are control. The meticulous nature of these grimoires demonstrates how humans project order onto the unpredictable, echoing themes first found in the Hebrew Bible and Second Temple literature. Yet grimoires are also aesthetic and narrative tools. The images they produce, coats of arms, intricate sigils, armored demons, detailed punishments, cement cultural imagery that endures in movies, video games, and literature. While late and often sensational, these texts popularized the visual and functional ideas of demons in ways Scripture never fully codified. They serve as a bridge between ancient myth, theological speculation, and popular imagination. Importantly, grimoires reveal the dual nature of human engagement with evil, fear and fascination. On one hand, people sought protection, guidance, and strategy. On the other, they explored curiosity, ambition, and power. By naming, cataloging, and ranking demons, humans attempt mastery over forces that remain ultimately beyond full comprehension. Grimoires also demonstrate the shift from angelic and divine authority to human initiative, whereas archangels, like Michael or Raphael, act as executors of divine will. Human practitioners attempt to negotiate with, summon, or control spirits directly. This shift illustrates both the audacity and the limitations of human agency. Humans can strategize, ritualize, and prepare, but the ultimate authority remains with the divine hierarchy. As we move to the final section, the coda, why demons endure, the lesson of the grimoires becomes clear. Whether celestial or human, named or codified, demons endure because fear, desire, and imagination are timeless. From the Bible to medieval manuscripts, from angels to infernal hierarchies, these forces persist because they reveal human vulnerabilities, cultural anxieties, and the universal struggle between order and chaos. Ask any century to name its worst demon, and the answer will always reflect the fears and anxieties of that time. In Job, it is chaos at sea, untamable and incomprehensible. At Qumran, it is Belial, commanding forces of darkness, a cosmic general of evil. In the intimate world of Tobit, it is Asmodeus, stalking brides on their wedding nights. For the materially obsessed, it is Mammon, whispering in the counting house. For those facing societal horrors, it is Moloch, the consuming fire. Each era projects its own anxieties onto the spiritual canvas, giving fear a shape, a name, and a story. Demons endure because they mirror human concerns. They dramatize the moral, the political, and the existential. Leviathan and Behemoth measure the scale of chaos. Abaddon executes judgment with terrifying precision. Lilith and Samael embody desire and mortality. Each demon, each fear, is a reflection of what humanity struggles to name, confront, and understand. And the angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, answer in turn, offering medicine, guidance, and justice, reminding us that hope is equally enduring. Visualize a montage of these stories: storm-tossed seas for Leviathan, desert parchment, and Qumran caves for Belial, candlelit chambers for Asmodeus, gold coins slipping into shadows for Mammon, flames licking high for Moloch, nocturnal cityscapes for Lilith and Samael, intercut with archangels in action, swords raised, messages delivered, healing enacted, visions illuminated, showing a cosmic interplay that spans centuries and human imagination. The staying power of demons is rooted in how precisely they name what we fear. They are not only myth or folklore, they are narrative instruments, teaching us about consequence, morality, and the boundaries of human behavior. Every demon, every story, offers insight into the societal, spiritual, and personal landscapes of its time. At the same time, the angels and divine figures remind us that naming is power and hope is structured. Every fear projected onto a demon has a corresponding answer, a figure to guide, to fight, to heal, to illuminate. Michael contends, Raphael heals, Gabriel speaks, Uriel interprets, and in the human sphere, even the man on the shore, the man delivered from legion, asks for a name, a way to understand, to reclaim his life. The narrative closes with a quiet yet profound truth. Demons endure because humanity will always face fear, uncertainty, and moral challenge. Yet the story of angels, of deliverance, of knowledge shows that understanding, naming, and confronting fear transforms it. Across texts, traditions, and centuries, the dance of fear and hope continues, echoing through scripture, folklore, and imagination. Visualize the final moments. A candle flickers out, symbolizing darkness and fear. Then a sunrise over water, gentle and expansive, signaling renewal, deliverance, and the enduring hope that even the most terrifying forces have a counterpart in guidance, protection, and courage. The stories of demons and angels converge into a single lesson. To know fear is human, to name it is wisdom, to face it is triumph. The stories of demons didn't vanish when the scrolls closed or the medieval grimoires gathered dust. Instead, they mutated and thrived in modern imagination, appearing in literature, cinema, video games, and even advertising. Names like Lilith, Asmodeus, Mammon, and Belial resonate today because fear is timeless, and so is curiosity. Consider Lilith, from a nocturnal seductress and infant threat in medieval Jewish lore to a figure of rebellion, feminism, and mystery in contemporary novels and films. She symbolizes the tension between societal expectations and personal freedom, desire, and danger. Modern portrayals often reinterpret her as empowered rather than malevolent, yet the aura of fear and fascination remains. Asmodeus, once a stalker of brides, now appears in fantasy novels and games as a cunning adversary, teaching strategy and trickery in digital realms. Mammon haunts Wall Street in political thrillers, looms over corporate greed in dystopian films, and even becomes a metaphor in economics, branding, and culture. Moloch is invoked in literature and cinema as the machine or system that devours innocence, the metaphorical engine of exploitation and oppression. Even the archangels persist. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel appear in countless stories, novels, films, and RPGs as protectors, healers, and messengers. They provide a counterbalance to the chaos, showing that modern audiences crave both threat and resolution, evil and deliverance, shadow and light. Visualize this montage: Lilith in a neon-lit cityscape, wings folded against towering skyscrapers, Mammon's coins spilling across a modern trading floor, Asmodeus lurking in the shadowed alleys of digital worlds, Michael wielding a glowing sword in a cinematic battle against a dragon. Each scene connects past and present, showing that narratives of fear evolve but never disappear. Why do these demons endure in popular culture? Because humans still project anxieties, desires, and moral dilemmas onto them. They embody universal concerns: greed, lust, death, chaos, ambition. They are flexible archetypes, able to reflect contemporary fears while preserving the narrative DNA of ancient demonology. Modern storytelling also expands the teaching function of demonology, whereas ancient texts warned, cataloged, or codified. Contemporary media explores human choice, psychology, and ethics. Demons in pop culture test morality, challenge heroes, and reveal vulnerabilities. Angels continue to instruct, guide, and protect, showing that hope and fear remain intertwined in compelling narratives. In this way, the story of demons is never static. From Hebrew scripture to medieval grimoires to modern cinema, these forces endure because they articulate what humans cannot always confront directly: chaos, desire, and then mortality. And as long as humans seek meaning, protection, and understanding, demons will remain in the stories we tell, shadows that illuminate the human experience. The modern echoes naturally set the stage for the final segment, Lessons from Demonology, which examines what these enduring myths teach about morality, psychology, and the human condition itself. Across centuries, demons have appeared in stories, scriptures, and grimoires, not simply to terrify, but to teach, reflect, and illuminate. From the earliest adversaries of the Hebrew Bible to modern interpretations in literature and film, these figures reveal something enduring about human nature: our fears, our moral struggles, and our longing for understanding. First, demons teach the power of naming. Hey, Satan began as the adversary, a role rather than a being. Over time, Belial, Asmodeus, Leviathan, and Mammon were given names, personalities, and narratives. Naming fear, assigning identity to chaos, allows humans to conceptualize and confront it. Every exorcism, every ritual, every story from Job to the grimoires reflects this principle. To name is to wield agency. Second, demonology demonstrates the interplay of order and chaos. Leviathan represents untamable forces. Abaddon executes judgment. Mammon tempts through desire. In each case, the world of demons mirrors human vulnerability and societal instability. At the same time, angels like Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel represent structure, guidance, and hope, showing that while chaos is inevitable, so is resistance. This duality is central to human understanding. Life is a balance of risk and protection, fear and courage. Third, demons reveal moral and psychological truths. Lilith exposes fears surrounding autonomy and desire. Asmodeus tests loyalty, love, and domestic stability. Moloch and Mammon embody societal and economic pressures. By externalizing these fears as spiritual beings, cultures create narratives that allow reflection and coping. They provide a symbolic framework through which humans can examine ethics, responsibility, and consequence. Fourth, demonology shows the universality of fear and hope. Across cultures and centuries, humans project anxieties into mythic forms. Yet for every demon, there is an angel, a deliverance, or a path toward understanding. This pattern persists in modern storytelling. Every horror film, fantasy saga, or myth inspired game continues the ancient dialogue between peril and protection, darkness and light. Finally, demonology emphasizes resilience through knowledge, whether through scripture, ritual, grimoire, or story. Learning about these forces, understanding their patterns, and invoking countermeasures, names, rituals, morality, or strategy demonstrates a timeless truth. Knowledge is empowerment. Even today, when we encounter demons in fiction, they challenge us to think critically, act wisely, and face fears creatively. The overarching lesson is clear. Demons endure not because evil is omnipotent, but because humans always grapple with uncertainty, danger, and desire. Angels endure because hope, wisdom, and action are equally timeless, and across all ages, the stories of demons and angels are not merely tales of terror. They are mirrors reflecting human courage, resilience, and the eternal pursuit of understanding. Visualize the closing montage. Waves crash on ancient shores, parchment scrolls burn to ash, medieval seals dissolve into sunlight, cinematic depictions of demons and angels fade to silhouettes against dawn. The screen brightens, showing a horizon of possibility. Humanity continues to face fear, but through knowledge, morality, and courage, it continues to endure. In the end, the narrative of demons and angels is more than mythology. It is a story of the human condition, an enduring map of our fears, our hope, and our unceasing quest to name, confront, and understand the unknown.